Little Thumbby Charles Perrault. A poor family of woodcutters has 7 children. The youngest, very small, is nicknamed Little Thumb. Due to extreme poverty, the parents decide to abandon their children in the forest. Little Thumb, the smallest but the cleverest, listens to his parents' plan and collects white pebbles along the way to mark the trail back. In this way, he guides his brothers back home after they are deliberately left in the forest. A short time later, the parents try to abandon them again, but this time Little Thumb only finds bread and leaves crumbs. However, birds eat all the crumbs, and the children end up truly lost. Wandering through the forest, the boys find the house of a terrible ogre who devours children. With great cunning during the night, Little Thumb swaps the brothers' hats for the crowns of the ogre's daughters, causing the monster to mistakenly eat his own daughters. When the ogre realizes his mistake, he chases after the boys but falls asleep. Little Thumb then steals the 7-league boots, magical footwear that allows you to travel great distances quickly. Thumb uses the boots to earn rewards as a messenger for the king. In the end, he returns home with enough money so that his family will never go hungry again. Little Thumb, the smallest and most underestimated, is a symbol of intelligence and strategy over brute force. Parental abandonment reflects fears of extreme poverty, veiled infanticide, and the survival of children in the face of the dangers of the adult world. The ogre represents archetypal dangers and horrors: cannibalism, predators, the threat of the unknown. The 7-league boots symbolize overcoming limits, social advancement, and ingenuity. The youngest of the 7 and the weight of abandonment. On a night darker than fear itself, 7 siblings awaken to witness the cruelest side of survival. Their own parents are plotting to abandon them. But among them is a boy so small he could fit in a seashell. His strength lies not in his body, but in his sharp mind. Have you ever felt ignored for being too small, but knew that you were the only one capable of saving everyone around you? This is the beginning of the true tale of Little Thumb, where cunning triumphs over monsters, abandonment becomes redemption, and the impossible becomes a path. In a humble cabin on the edge of the forest, 7 siblings live between hunger and hope. The smallest of them was born so tiny that he was given the name Thumb, but unlike the others, he never accepted his apparent weakness. The table is empty of food. Sighs turn to sobs at night. The father, overcome by despair and poverty, plans something unthinkable: to abandon all his children, for it is better to lose them in the shadows of the forest than to see them wither away between 4 walls. Unwittingly, Thumb overhears the horrific decision, and that's when its arc opens. The mind begins to work, drawing up plans, collecting white pebbles, tracing an invisible path back home. The challenge: surviving where no one expects you to be a leader. The adult world may try to silence Thumb, but intelligence reveals paths that no adult would see. The Thumb is the archetype of the rejected, but never the submissive. His cunning is the light of the human shadow, that which is born from fear and becomes power. Parental abandonment is the encounter with the outside world, where each child is forced to seek meaning on their own. What would you do to survive abandonment? Have you ever used your intelligence to overcome people who thought you were weak? Comment. If you were Tom Thumb, would you go back home or try to build a new path? The forest closes in on the boys. Before morning, Thumb picks up the pebbles, makes marks, and guides them all home. In the first twist of his hero's arc, effect, rustling of branches, sighs of relief, rising soundtrack, the night of decision, when the youngest becomes leader. Hunger in that house wasn't just physical pain, it was a shadow that consumed every word spoken by the adults. At the edge of the bed, Thumb could hear the creaking of the wood, The whispered conversations, the cruel plan for extreme survival. His siblings slept embraced, but he was awake, feeling in his chest the strange weight of responsibility even before being called a hero. Thumb didn't cry. He didn't call for help. He simply got up, quietly left, and gathered up white pebbles. Adult eyes never build paths, but fearless children learn to mark the way as if scribbling portals in the dead of night. The next morning, the father led his children through the forest. He called it a walk, but no one smiled. The smell of wet earth mixed hope with despair. The boys' steps were soft. Thumb, the smallest, looked back every 10 meters, discreetly dropping each pebble, like someone sowing a future where there is only threat. As the sun began to plunge on the horizon, the father and mother needed to fetch firewood. A heavy silence descended like fog. The siblings wept. Thumbelina merely observed, remembering the invisible map slowly being drawn. In moments of true abandonment, he transforms into a guide, never a victim. "Follow me," he whispers, his voice firmer than his size, a leadership born of humility and a clear vision of danger. The walk back is slow, surreal. The pebbles gleam in the twilight, each one a new hope. Little by little, the forest opens up and the path home reappears, bringing not only relief, but the first fragment of respect from the siblings. The little one, for the first time, is seen, not as a burden, but as salvation. Upon returning, they realize that their parents weren't expecting to see them again, and that the despair might be even greater the second time. The following night, Thumb won't find stones, only bread. The survival plan now depends on something deeper: cunning in the face of the unpredictable, courage in the face of the unknown. Would you survive abandonment twice? How do you rebuild trust when the adult world fails you? Comment. Have you ever been underestimated and proven your worth in an unexpected way? On the trail of the abyss, lost without a signal. The hunger hasn't gone away. The return, though miraculous, hasn't brought plenty to the house. The parents weep softly, but despair silences all pleas for help. Dark night. The father, overcome by misery and fear, now decides to abandon his children again. Only a piece of stale bread, his only resource to try and map a hostile world. He shares the crumbs, leaving a trail, confident that, like the stones, the small clues will serve as a guide. But those who think that the human forest resembles the animal world are mistaken. The birds, silent figures of chance, devour their hope grain by grain, erasing every trail, plunging Thumb and his brothers into the absolute unknown. Fear now smells of earth and eyes gleaming in the undergrowth. Some brothers cry, others rebel. Thumb remains silent, attentive to what emerges between twisted trees. A distant house, windows red as eyes of fire, the ogre's house. The group approaches, not out of courage, but out of desperation. Will they be welcomed? Will that be their refuge? Thumb observes and senses the risk. The atmosphere is heavy, as if each stone in the path held promises of unfathomable danger. At the door, an old woman with a tired face greets them hesitantly. "My boys, what are you looking for here?" Thumb replies calmly, "Just shelter for one night. We're not looking for a party, just a chance to survive." The woman hesitates, searches in the shadows, listens for the sounds of the returning ogre. "They shouldn't be here. My husband eats child flesh." The group hesitates, but now the monster is at the door. Tall, brutal eyes of fire, voice like thunder. Who are these intruders? The wife, fearing for everyone's lives, tries to hide the boys under the bed. The encounter with the monster Thumb faces absolute horror for the first time. The ogre is a symbol of a threat impossible to combat by force. Cannibalism, violence, destruction of children's futures. But in the eyes of the youngest brother, the second arc emerges, confronting terror not through physical force, But through strategic thinking, in the early morning, Thumb watches the ogre prepare his knife, choosing the weakest ones to devour first. But that night, the youngest of the 7 makes the riskiest move. He swaps his brother's hats for the crowns of the ogre's daughters, mixing up identities and causing the greatest irreversible tragedy. The monster devours his own daughters, believing he is saving the house from possible revenge. Would you confront the monster face to face, or would you seek to win through cunning? Have you ever used your intellect to turn around a losing game? Comment. What makes a hero? Brute force or intelligence in the face of adversity? Night escape and the birth of the icon. The night in the ogre's house seems endless. Muffled cries, heavy footsteps, the darkness of fear lurking around every boy huddled beneath the beds. Thumb, however, doesn't sleep. With his mind on high alert, he observes every detail. The dirty knife left on the table, the monsters snoring, the children's crowns in the next room. Silently, at the slightest sign of distraction, Thumb approaches the ogre's daughters, who are fast asleep with gleaming crowns on their heads. He swaps his brother's hats for those golden ornaments. The plan is simple but macabre. To reverse fate, literally replacing the role of prey with that of daughter, confusing even the executioner himself. The ogre wakes up in the middle of the night, his eyes bloodshot with hunger and fury. He doesn't hesitate. He follows the cruel ritual, taking the children from under the bed by the wrong accessory. It is their own daughters who are devoured in the twilight. The resulting silence is not one of peace, but of bewildered horror. Thumb holds back tears, for he knows, to survive in a world where ogres exist, whoever hesitates becomes king of the dead. The hunt. The ogre quickly realizes his mistake. The scream echoing through the house is more animal than human, a lament that makes walls and souls tremble. Wife in tears, brothers in panic. Thumbelina is already drawing the only possible escape route. Run. The children venture into the dark woods. Only instinct and Thumb's memory guide their steps. Every broken branch is a threat. Every sound in the wind could be the monster approaching. Behind them, the ogre slips into his 7-league boots. Magical, gigantic pieces that allow him to walk kilometers in a few seconds. A hunt begins. The enemy doesn't stop, doesn't tire. Each footstep shakes the trees. Each breath is a raging wind. Thumb, with the charisma of someone who has faced death head-on, orders silence, proposes reversals, forces his brothers to cover their tracks, hide their breaths, and turn into leaves on the damp ground. The threshold between victim and hero. At this point, Thumb ceases to be merely a survivor and becomes the author of his own destiny. The suffocating atmosphere of the hunt is symbolic of the trauma in the face of the unthinkable, the pursuit of parental death personified. His leadership is the birth of early maturity. Childhood ends when facing the shadow is a matter of seconds and absolute silence. At one point, Thumb observes the ogre in the treetop resting, and he sees, impressed, almost tempted, the magic boots lying near the sleeping monster. There, a new destiny unfolds, the courage to return, to take risks, to approach the most deadly danger, just to become a legend yourself. Would you have the courage to return to the monster and steal its greatest power? What is more dangerous, running away forever or risking everything to change the game once and for all? Comment. At what point in the face of fear have you felt the stirrings of true courage? The boots of destiny, the rise of Little Thumb. The forest grows quiet when the ogre falls asleep, his immense body bent in the shade of an ancient tree. Thumb observes, takes a deep breath, his mind in turmoil. There lies the turning point in his life. Fleeing would be safe, but risking heading towards the nightmare might guarantee an impossible freedom. Without warning his brothers, he advances silently, his feet as light as thought, his eyes fixed on the 7-league boots. These boots are gigantic, made to travel the world in an instant. In the story, they symbolize immense power, generally inaccessible to the small and the poor. Thumb, gathering all his audacity, slips into the boots. First sensation, fear. Second, absolute triumph. With each step, a world unfolds. A forest that could have been destroyed transforms into an open road. The ogre grumbles, wakes up, reaches for his boots, but it's too late for his eyes. The boy is already far away, flying over grass, stone, swamp, hill. The scene changes. Thumb is no longer the hostage. He becomes the protagonist, almost a walking legend, someone who defies the very limits of space. In just a few leaps, little Thumb crosses cities, faces fiefdoms, and approaches the royal court. 2 astonished guards see the boy arrive in magic boots. They try to stop him, but with each zigzag, little Thumb disappears, impressing even the most skeptical. The king, informed of his exploits, wishes to transform Thumbelina into a special messenger. Only someone with such power can accomplish missions that were previously impossible. Thumb accepts, after all, the chance to be more than the youngest of the brothers, to prove not only survival but excellence. Inside the castle, each mission has its own obstacles, delivering a military secret, a peace offering, or a ransom demand. With each delivery, Thumb learns the value of words, of silent courage, of humility amidst luxury. The rumor spreads. The boy capable of flying over the world was born of abandonment, conquered monsters, and now speaks directly to the throne. Fame, however, does not intoxicate Thumb. He only wishes in the end to reunite with his family with dignity and sufficient resources so that they will never again be victims of hunger or fear. Overcoming the human condition. Thumb now faces the final arc of maturation. It's not enough to survive. It's necessary to transform personal pain into something collective, to ensure that the experience of horror becomes protection for loved ones. His boots are a symbol of social transcendence, ascension without losing humility, power without losing compassion. Before returning, Thumb hears rumors. The ogre, driven mad by rage and grief, seeks revenge. He wants to recapture the boy who destroyed his life and his legend. Now the courage that saved brothers must save his own soul. Is it possible to defeat an enemy that seems eternal? Do you believe in redemption for those who face the worst of monsters? Is it possible to forget the past of abandonment, or does it always reappear at the end of the journey? Comment. What weapons would you use if you had to protect your family after all this? The return of the hero. Hunger, reconciliation, and legacy. The time Thumb spends between kings and missions opens wounds. The brothers, though separated, survive through memories and the younger ones' discoveries. Each new day brings hope of reunion, but also fear that hunger or an ogre might take them before the sun even rises. Thumb, now in possession of the 7-league boots and the court's trust, has only one goal: to return to his origins and break the cycle of abandonment forever. With each service rendered to the king, he earns a coin. The treasure is not merely glittering. It will be the salvation of his home, the restoration of his dignity, the reunion, and the final test. On a windy morning, Thumb crosses the fields faster than the clouds themselves. He arrives at the door of the old cabin, a place of pain and hope. The mother, seeing her son, faints from emotion. The father, previously overcome with despair, cries like a child. The brothers join in a collective embrace. They no longer lament their stolen childhood, but celebrate the resilience of their youngest sibling. The accumulated treasure is shared among all, without pride, without vanity. Thumb, despite being the smallest, becomes the pillar, now not only for saving lives, but for teaching. Overcoming the past, the cycle is complete. Parental abandonment is not a lifelong condemnation. For those who resist, it can be a source of motivation, transformation, and reconciliation. Thumb demonstrates that a childhood marked by trauma can be redeemed, provided that courage, intelligence, and a desire for reconstruction do not succumb to the original fear. The treasure gained is not merely material. The boy earns a place, respect, and his own narrative. Celebrating their return, the family realizes that the dangers never completely disappear. The ogre continues to haunt the stories, and the world will never be entirely peaceful. But when Thumb feels the weight of the 7 league boots, he understands that true power lies not in escape, but in the possibility of changing one's own world, and the world of others. Have you ever transformed pain into strength to protect those you love? Do you believe it's possible to write a different ending after so much suffering? Comment. What does legacy mean to you? Wealth, courage, memory, or redemption? The true size of courage. At the end of every journey, when the dust settles and fear becomes a memory, the one who was the smallest discovers they are the greatest. The world will never see the glint of the pebbles marking the path, nor hear the silent thoughts of the hidden child. But every saved family carries in its heart the indelible mark of cunning and boundless love. Narrative outcome. Little Thumb transformed suffering into protection, abandonment into redemption, pain into hope. Upon returning home, he neither asked for rewards nor sought recognition. His legacy is invisible but profound. Every child who hears his story understands that intelligence is a weapon, courage is a shield, and humility is a crown. The ogre vanished down the paths of oblivion, and the parents, redeemed by the chance of reunion, learned to value not only bread, but also a fraternal gaze, a group embrace, the chance to start over from the worst ruin. In the village, he became a legend, not for being the smallest, but for being the one who never gave up. The cycle of famine has been broken, but the cycle of wisdom has become infinite. The story shows that abandonment can breed monstrosity or genius. It depends on the courage to resist and the ability to forge new paths. Thumb is the ultimate example of what Jung calls the little hero, the underestimated individual who triumphs in the external world by achieving inner maturity. The treasure is not gold, it is narrative, the story that nourishes those who come after, the teaching of the invisible. What invisible mark do you carry from your past? Who was your go-to person during times of crisis? Share this story with anyone who believes size is destiny. Subscribe and comment. Which short story deserves a psychological script and in-depth analysis here on the channel? And never forget, sometimes, only the smallest can chart the longest path.